You hungry?
Yeah, I'm hungry.
What do you think, Chipotle?
Chipotle sounds good, yeah.
All right, let me, I'm gonna need a little earnest money this time though. Last time I ordered you a burrito, you dipped, and then I got stuck with your burrito, and I paid for the whole cost.
Earnest money? Why do I need earnest money again?
Because we're real estate agents? Yeah, earnest money, because this way, if you screw me on the burrito, I'm gonna forfeit your earnest money, and I'm gonna keep your burrito.
So no chicken fajita burrito for me?
If you leave, no. But,
Oh,
but as
God.
long as you're here, as long as you stay and you get your burrito, I'll apply your earnest money towards the purchase price of your burrito.
That's a lot, isn't it?
A lot to ask?
Yeah.
No, it's not a lot to ask. I'm not going to be stuck paying for your meal and then have you not show up.
That doesn't sound like me.
Whatever. How was your burrito?
Delicious.
Welcome back to eXp Realty. I'm your host today, Justin Campbell. We have the amazing Jordan Harvey here with us today, and we are going to go really deep into earnest money. You guys ready?
All right, boy, oh boy, am I ready.
All right, let's do it. Jordan, what's earnest money?
Wow, well, I think the easiest way to explain it would be collateral, right? This is gonna be where you're putting money where your mouth is. You wanna buy a house, you wanna put money on the line, and let the seller know that you're serious about buying their house. That's what earnest money is.
So let's just kind of like break this down from a buyer standpoint. When you're putting earnest money in a property, what's a good number for earnest money? Do you have like a baseline that you use for that, or is it kind of ad hoc depending on the property?
I think every property is going to be different. I think the market's changed a little bit. I think like a common practice that all realtors have been taught is to put down 1%. So if you're buying a house at $400,000, a pretty common earnest money check would be $4,000.
Why would a buyer not want to do $1, for example? Like going to the extreme side, why would you not want to do?
I mean, there's really no like recourse for a seller if you decide to wait to the last day and not purchase the house. So here the seller is, they've gone through the whole process of selling their house, getting it ready, signing paperwork, and then on the day that you go to the closing table, you decide to move to Mexico and not come back. They have $1 to take
recourse.
back,
Yeah.
from you backing out.
So you want it to be enough that it's going to be an inconvenience to lose it, at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I got an offer on my listing from the listing side that was $1,000, and when we looked at it, we're like, the buyer could walk and lose $1,000, right? And is it worth it to my seller? So in that particular case, we ended up trying to counter back. Why would a buyer want to do more than 1%? Or we're saying 4,000 on this example. Why would a buyer want to do more than 1,000?
It shows like the seriousness of buying the house. Like I've had a past client who really just wanted to go all in with an offer, and they offered $30,000
Nice.
of earnest money, and that's like, to me, like usually I don't recommend that much, but it does show a seriousness. A little bit over 1% is a really good chunk. Like for example, I just did this on a house that was listed in the mid sixes, and we went to a $10,000 earnest money.
Okay.
That kind of equates for like not only the inconvenience of not closing, but like if a seller is moving out of this house, they have $10,000 to go back on market and kind of recoup some of their losses that they did not selling.
I think for the seller, when I'm looking at this from the seller standpoint, talking with a buyer, is I want that buyer to have a little skin in the game, And I think the common misconception is that this earnest money just disappears, but the earnest money actually shows back up on the settlement statement as a buyer credit at closing. So if you need $20,000 down for the down payment, you do $10,000 in earnest money. When you go to closing, you'd only need to bring $10,000 in this scenario.
Yeah. And I recently just had a seller too. He did more commercial, and commercials, it's pretty strict. Like you don't get anything back at all
If you cancel.
And then so he was when he was selling his personal house, it was a little bit different, where people tend to do like they do a refundable earnest money. So if they don't close due to financing, they're still able to recoup some of that earnest money back. But I think kind of just lately in the market, there's been a lot of pre-approvals given out from banks that just haven't gone through, that sellers are a little bit more equipped to, at least have a point in time where the earnest money will be non-refundable.
I mean, in almost every situation, if you play by the rules from the buyer's standpoint, you're going to get that earnest money back. If you cancel during inspection, or maybe the appraisal comes in low, or you don't get your pre-qualification falls apart, you're no longer approved, you're going to get the earnest money back. The big thing is the time that you won't get the earnest money is in Jordan's example where you decide to go to another nation on closing date. There's a really good chance you're going to lose the earnest money in that case.
Yeah, I think like losing your job is a big thing too. So you would think that people would be a little bit more accommodating to get your earnest money back if you lose your job, because now you're not going to be able to afford the house that you're looking to purchase.
What do you think about using maybe like a portion or all of the money non-refundable? Let's say in your scenario, you're saying it's $6,000 earnest money, and you say $2,000 of it's non-refundable. Do you think it's a good strategy?
Yeah, it's a good conversation to have too with your client if you're gonna do
The buyer?
non-refundable. Yeah, the buyer, that if you're gonna do non-refundable earnest money, that hey, are you okay that if
You're gonna lose it.
You could lose it if you don't close, and if they're willing to risk that because they really like the house, they really want to move there. It's just advantageous for them to do it because they're pretty confident that they do it.
And from the seller standpoint in that case, if I'm presenting that offer to a seller, I'm be like, hey, worst case scenario with this offer, you're going to get X dollars. I haven't seen a lot of non-refundable earnest monies, but I have used it in offer scenarios, and I think it is a really useful tool. What are the scenarios where if there's a dispute about the earnest money? Have you ever had a dispute about earnest money?
Yeah, so I recently I had a seller, we accepted a VA offer, and the client decided to just not purchase it 2 days before closing.
And they were underwriting, and so they were basically clear to close?
Yeah, it was
okay.
Clear to close, and it was just under my feeling that I'm gonna, not purchase this house because they got cold feet, right? They came up right up to the altar and left.
Wow. And how much, if that's why we want that skin in the game with the earnest money. And kind of in our little skit we did earlier today talking about that for a contract to be ratified, there needs to be an exchange between two parties. And the earnest money makes that contract, ratifies that contract. That's why it's so important that we get the earnest money in there in a really timely fashion. What about doing just like a ridiculous earnest money? If it was this $600,000 house, put $100,000 earnest money. How do you think a seller is going to react in that situation?
I think earnest money, it really hasn't played much of an impact in the last few years, but I think now it's like showing that, you put skin in the game, that you put $100,000 down. And this is kind of what happened with personally is that like we were actually a little bit lower in price, but our earnest money was non-refundable, that they wanted more of a guaranteed smoother closing. They just gave me a call to see if we could just work out a deal because the non-refundable earnest money is actually a really good term to have.
It's a high incentive for the seller because most people are going to get their earnest money back in most cases. So it doesn't really have a lot of weight, but I do think sellers put a lot of stock in earnest money. If you come in with like a really low earnest money, just say low as $1,000, you come in with that, it seems like sellers balk at it. Even though I've never had a buyer lose their earnest money in all the homes that I've sold. So, the chance that it's going to happen is really low as long as you play the game. But using that non-refundable, was it all non-refundable or just a portion of it?
So the thing that you really need to talk about with your seller when you're accepting offers for them is that it was a VA loan. So VA loans, the earnest money is always refundable no matter what. So it's a big thing to consider when you are accepting a VA offer. Love helping vets out, but if unfortunately this vet decided to leave, you don't really have recourse.
You don't have recourse.
Yeah.
And I kind of understand that situation because for our veterans, we do need to have an extra layer of protection there because they could get that phone call. Now they're in wherever we go when we go places with our military.
Yeah.
Do you think 2%? So if you have a buyer, maybe let's just say it's a little bit more competitive. You're trying to get in there. Would you do 2%, or you still kind of just stick with the 1% as a conversation?
2% I think is more than plenty. 2% really does show that you are serious. I think it comes down to the non-refundable aspect, because if you're putting 1% down, that's refundable, and 2% down, that's refundable. There's really not much of a difference in what's going to dictate your offer getting accepted.
It does seem like the sellers, like when I do present, if I'm doing multiple offers and I present it, I don't know why. I try to explain to the seller there's a really low chance that you're going to get this earnest money, but they still like that number, and I don't know. maybe it's because they're looking at it from the financial health of the buyer. So if that's the $600,000 scenario, if I put $50,000 down in earnest money, it shows that seller that I have some liquidity, right? That I have some cash, that I have some money.
Yeah.
And that, because I think almost every problem, except for health related, just about every problem can be solved with money. So if the appraisal comes in low or something else happens, they have the funds there and they're able to get that to close.
Yeah, it seems like convenience is actually a big factor nowadays. More, not just price, and having that
Other
big
terms,
chunk, that big chunk of money that's available to close the deal is going to be a little more satisfying to a seller.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for jumping into this video today.
Yeah.
That was our timer there.
Yeah.
So that is all the time we got for today's video. If you got some value from this video, if you could like it, share it, comment. If you got other content that you'd like us to produce, let us know. We're going to kind of just work through this process each step of the way. Hopefully you got some value from this, and then we'll see you guys in the next video.
Sounds great. Take care.